especially actually in our area today, and to also, I realise we've got a representative from Liverpool here as well, but it would be remiss of me to congratulate Newcastle on a fantastic victory yesterday afternoon. I was looking downstairs at the welcome at the bottom part of the museum, and it's talking about Newcastle's glory years, and it was talking about the 50s, but there'll be another poster or another board going to be added to that particular section, I think, after yesterday's game. So a very warm welcome to Newcastle, and I think Liverpool are still on for the Premiership Championship anyway. Certainly.
My son was texting me about this, and I said, oh, but lots of happy magpies around here. And I found on my iPad a picture of two young boys in Soweto when I visited in South Africa on a trade union deal, and they were in absolute rags. One of them is now wearing a Newcastle United football shirt. So looks on the green in Soweto as well.
It can put up a lot of barriers, but it can bring them down as well. So that's football all the way through. Okay, fine, thank you. As a result of the changes which local government is going through today, we've got some new members, or some members that are doing now representing different sort of bodies, and Lancashire County Combined Authority, it's a pleasure to say welcome to Phil Riley, who's been with us before, but he's now taking on that role. And also to sort of say thanks to some people who have done tremendous amount of work over the past few years. Rupert Swarbeck, who of course was Vice Chairman of Transport for the North, who's done a brilliant job, is not standing anyway for re-election, I don't think, in May, and therefore is not here today. Councillor Lynn Williams from Blackpool, and Mark Oronevo from Hull City Council. And as I say, that is partly the changes that are taking place as far as some of the new combined authorities and the like are concerned. So with that, can I have the list of other apologies, please, Gary?
Yes, there's been a number of apologies this afternoon. So there's been apologies from Mayors Burnham and Coppard, and Councillors O'Brien, Hunt, Gittins, Rollo, Handley, Hill and Mitchell, as well as Nick Harris, Stephen Parnaby and Claire Haywood.
Thank you. So that puts us into a slightly unusual position that we're not quorate in our normal numbers. So, Martin, would you like to just say how we're going to deal with a couple of things on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. Well, just to explain, we know that Mayor Brabin and Councillor Kilbane are on their way, but they're delayed on the rail services at the moment. But in terms of taking this meeting forward, the proposal under the Constitution is that we take it as a consultation meeting, so that it's under my powers under the Constitution, and therefore we will be seeking your view and steer, and at various points we'll be suggesting how we need to then follow up on with other members of the board. Chair, Mayor McGuinness.
Mayor McGuinness, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It's not everyone else saying about that shortly, but can I just ask, is it common to have a policy issue?
No, and it's genuinely, we've had 3 or 4 people overnight. So we had Councillor Rollo who told us overnight, Councillor Gittins who said to us overnight. So we've had a number of apologies. So Mayor McGuinness, I'm sorry, it's just that's.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Martin. Right, can I just also remind people that they need to declare any interest, whether they're personal or prejudicial, or peculiar interests they have regarding any items which may or may not be which may be on the agenda. Is there anybody wishing to do anything as to the agenda items? No, thank you very much indeed. Martin, can we just...
There we are. Shall I move that in front of me? A place that is on the map nationally and internationally, creating great jobs, building great houses, making sure that every child that grows up here has access to the opportunity that they deserve, tackling poverty and making sure that, that we are ever moving forward, and really shouting out on behalf of not just the North East, but on behalf of the North more broadly. And I know a lot of us met recently at the Convention of the North, where exactly these themes were on the agenda. And transport is utterly key to that. We're, much like other other combined authorities, on the brink of submitting our regional growth plan, which has, a home of real opportunity, a growing and vibrant economy for everyone, a place we're proud to call home, the home of green energy, and a home for global trade as our key missions in that growth plan. And transport is absolutely fundamental to all of those things. You're going to hear from Rochelle in a moment, who's going to talk you through our recent local transport plan consultation, which is something you're all familiar with. It's a statutory document, I get that, but that's not how we've approached it here. We've approached this as the biggest conversation that we've ever had with the public of the region about what transport means to them, about how transport unlocks opportunity, about how it's about more than getting from A to B, but it is about that infrastructure of opportunity, about our bold ambitions to make it safer, because if it's not safe, people won't use it, more integrated, more connected and greener. And crucially, about the real ambition that we have to really take the North East Transport Network and how it fits in nationally and put it on a different level. Much like many of you, we're on the journey to bring in our buses back under public control, continuing to have at the same time the sometimes arguments and the sometimes negotiations with the bus companies to continue to improve services. We are looking at expansion of our Tyne and Wear Metro at the same time as renewing a fleet. We want finally to bring the Leamside Line or the County Durham Railway, or what I would consider to be the best investment corridor opportunity in this country, to completion, and stop talking about things and start to deliver things. And so with that, I'm really glad to have Transport for the North in the region. I think there's a conversation about governance, and inevitably I'll have more to say about how I feel like we can progress this organisation in the interest of the whole of the North. But for now, I'll hand over, in fact, first of all, to Martin to see if he wants to say anything before we give Rochelle the opportunity to take you through some of our really quite bold and ambitious plans, and hopefully to get the support of the whole North, because I do think that what we're clearer on, what we're ever clearer on, is that we're stronger together as the Great North than we ever are as a sum of our parts. So I'll leave it there and hand over to Martin.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. You'd be relieved to know that I've got nothing You'd be relieved to know that I've got nothing to add to what Kim's already laid out. But no doubt if there is a discussion, I can participate in that. Rochelle. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Chair. So, as Mayor McGuinness mentioned, we've actually achieved a lot since the Combined Authority was formed in May, but there are still more challenges that we need to address, and they're set out in slide 6, which is included in your pack. I'm not going to run through those in detail because I'm a bit conscious of time, but some of the ones I wanted to pull out are that 1 in 4 adults are physically inactive in the North East, and just 36% of journeys to school were made by active travel in 2022. That's the second lowest English region. And 31% of our residents are at risk of transport-related social exclusion. And we do have congestion at some of our key junctions, especially on the A19, and I'm referring to Moor Farm and Seaton Burn roundabout, and that's hindering development in the region. And then there's an increasing need for maintenance of existing transport infrastructure in the North East, and that's why we've gone on to produce a local transport plan for the North East, which will set out how we want to address these challenges. So, following slide, which is slide 8, looks at the North East Local Transport Plan. So, a local transport plan for the North East has been drafted. That's going to Cabinet tomorrow. We will ask for endorsement to publish the transport plan. And that plan, as Mayor McGuinness mentioned, aims to create a green integrated transport network that works for all. And it covers a period right up to 2040, so we are looking far ahead. As Mayor McGuinness mentioned, we have been out to consult on this local transport plan that ran for 12 weeks, and we got a really good response rate of over 16,000 people responding to the survey. And of those responses, 81% were supporting our ambition in the transport plan. And that transport plan is accompanied by a delivery plan, and that sets out a list of what we will build, introduce or change up to 2040, and the mechanisms we will use to deliver in order to achieve the aim of the transport plan. And then the following slide, which looks at delivery, key things I want to pull out here is that we've got newly available funding, and that's in the form of CRSTS, it's the form of local electric vehicle infrastructure capital funding, and the additional BSIP funding. But then if we look at slide 10, there's more that's still needed to realise that ambition of the local transport plan. I do want to point out there's a typo in the slide pack that you've got. It does say 2050, but it should actually read 2040. So some of the things that we need are more funding and powers to enable us to achieve the aim of the transport plan to 2040. That includes £1.85 billion of CRSTS2 funding. That's both capital and revenue. It's also needing capacity funding to enable long-term local transport planning and delivery. And we also need additional powers to support the delivery of schemes. And we also require funding for new metro signal system because the current system is over 40 years old. And we're also requesting the reopening of the full Leamside line. As I mentioned earlier, we would like upgrades to the A19 junctions north of Newcastle, at Seaton Burn and Moor Farm, and further zero-emission vehicle infrastructure funding is required as well. And then just to conclude with slide 11, which looks at how we can work together, we want to continue working alongside Transport for the North and our other partners right across the North to help us go forward and realise the ambition of our local transport plan. Through that partnership, we'll be able to deliver important schemes that deliver the benefits for local, northern and national economy. And we would welcome Transport for the North support and assistance in making the case for investment in reopening of the Leamside line, in improving the junctions on the A19, and also making the case for dualling of the A1 between Morpeth and Ellingham, and getting the East Coast Main Line timetable right for the region and for the North as well. So, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to stop there.
Well, thank you very much indeed. As far as your new rollout of the new metro trains, which I visited with Martin some sort of 12 months ago, I think now, and that was at the early stages of preparation for that. How's that going, and what has been the sort of passenger? I would imagine the passenger response has just been mind-blowing as to the improvement that's there as far as those new trains are concerned, and probably a bit of sort of saying we want the rest out faster.
I was going to say, I mean, there's no doubt that introducing new rolling stock on any system is a challenge. I mean, £360 million of new rolling stock. And we're dealing with a situation where the existing rolling stock was well beyond its lifespan. Over 40 years old, beyond what they were anticipated to last. And so you had the difficulty of maintaining the existing trains while commissioning the new trains. It was always anticipated that it would take up to 2 years, so there was always going to be a performance issue through that transition. But from experience in other areas around the world, as well as in this country, the benefits upside of the introduction of the new rolling stock. So, you know, there have been challenges with a brand new bespoke rolling stock, but we're now in a situation where we're rolling those out piece by piece, and we're anticipating that more will go out this summer, and that we'll begin to see the long-term benefits begin to be able to kick in.
They are absolutely transformational.
Yeah.
And there's no two ways about it. I was on the first one that went into public service, and the response from the public was incredible. I mean, what I had not anticipated is how many people would, proactively wait to just get a look at the new trains. And that's because, there's a lot of people who really love railways, but it's actually also because there's a lot of people who really love the metro and really cherish what it gives to the region. And so I am more impatient than anybody else for those trains to be rolled out as quickly as possible, because the difference that they will make to, the service reliability, the comfort, the safety, all of the things that are key to delivery of our transport objectives is, it's second to none. And then if you couple that with the ambition that we've got for expansion of the metro into Washington, into the fourth biggest town in the country without access to a railway line, the opportunity that creates is huge. And for me, those brand new trains, which we will roll out as quickly as physically possible, and there's a lot of pressure on the team to do that, and they've done a great job, but they need to be moving as fast as possible. Those brand new trains are desperate to go further. And so, that expansion leading then into the Leamside Investment Corridor, opening up County Durham, it is absolutely fundamental to the plan around the metro.
Thank you. I mean, I've no doubt. I mean, I think as well, people feeling a lot safer on them as well. I mean, I just think the visibility, the safety aspects, was really quite remarkable. So it's interesting to hear how that's going on. Are there any other points that people wish to make? Hans, and then Mark.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for that. I think I'm looking at a couple of comments, looking at the paper there. I think what stands out is the actual, looking at the bus side of things, is the fare rates, is how long and how much money we've been investing in them to keep them rates down to get passengers back, and then how far away from them to getting passengers back to the numbers you need to actually start balancing it out.
I was going to say, if you don't mind,
We're back to...
I mean, there is a lot. I mean, we're dealing with a situation where it'll be the same. It's not just in the northeast of England, but across the country. We're talking about a long-term decline in bus usage, in terms of bus miles and bus usage. I think over 40 years, it's something like half the amount of bus usage. All of us as local authorities were asked to submit our plans in terms of bus recovery, and they was part of the BSIP process in the northeast of England. We consulted really widely on that and put a really ambitious plan forward, and we secured probably the most. Initially the government was saying there'd be £4 billion made available for bus service improvement, which then was subsequently reduced, and I think eventually there was the amount that was available nationally was £1.2 billion to support bus BSIP plans. And we submitted in the northeast of England an ambitious plan which was to not only halt decline in terms of bus mileage and usage, but an ambitious plan to recover, to actually, I think over the 10-year period, increase usage by 10%. I might have gotten those figures. I tend to make up figures, but it was about that, okay? And the bid was for £804 million. And that was out of a national programme of £1.2 billion. So, not surprisingly, we didn't get everything we asked for. So therefore, we haven't been able to deliver to that, okay? But we eventually received £169 million. Part of that was capital, part of it revenue, which we have used to support and introduce fare schemes, sort of for young people and for others, which is incredibly popular and has, particularly amongst young people, the £1 fare is massively popular. But I have to say at the end of the day that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about funding. I think it's not just a problem in the northeast of England, it's a problem that we face nationally, that if we're actually going to tackle those issues about congestion, air quality, environmental protection, then ultimately we need to provide a world-class, first-class public transport system, and that takes funding.
Yeah, I was actually trying to find some tips from you. So looking at the papers, I thought we might be able to pick something up to take back with us to how you're operating that. I think I'll take the opportunity while we're talking about buses to thank the Transport for North officers who's worked with the Warrington officers on making sure we actually get, because we own our own bus company, is to making sure that's put in the mix when it comes to the government guidelines, to make sure own bus companies can be taken into account when it comes to franchising. So thank the officers for the work we've been doing with Warrington on that basis. There's also the issue of you talked about funding the Green Book. Is particularly with the rail thing, it's going to be very important, is how the government relate to the new Green Book changes. And I think it's a question of holding the government to their word and how they're going to operate that. And that will help everybody in the north, and particularly in Newcastle on that side of things, to make sure the Green Book's adhered to in the right way, and then the north gets the imbalance switches from the south to all of us in the north. So I think that's all gone there. And the economic growth can look at the rail and the economic growth that rail fetches with it. So when you can get your rail lines going further and field with your new trains, actually the economic growth is going to give the government exactly what they're asking for, is a growth economically, and making sure the north can start delivering on some of the government's promises.
McGuinness.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in terms of tips, so keep capping the fares at £2.50. We felt it was an utter imperative if we wanted to keep passengers high to make an intervention on the fare cap. And it's as simple as we've paid for it. And it's the same with the £1 fares. We've paid for it. And so Martin's point about it being about money is absolutely true. And my view is that they are absolutely worthwhile they are economic interventions. You know, this is, yes, for me, particularly the £1 for kids is about tackling child poverty and, you know, the route to opportunity. But these are absolutely economic levers, and I think there's a clear message to government in that when they're considering what happens with the £3 fare cap at the end of the year. Many of us across the north have already made that intervention at different levels, and the fact that we're only able to do it at different levels shows the disparity in that funding available to us and the different systems that operate. And your point on the Green Book, I'm really, really pleased to see government make a clear intention, set a clear intention to address the Green Book and the disparities in funding for the North and the South. I think we've been quite clear here that we still think that funding is still too focused, not just in transport, but everything else in the South, and it absolutely has to change. I believe that Treasury knows this. But what I would say, and I guess that it's a slightly provocative point, is that if government need to change the Green Book to see the value of investing in the North, then that's not really good enough. So yes, we need to be at the table for the changes in the Green Book. We need them to happen. I'm really pleased about it, but it's about so much more than that. It is about fairness, it's about equality, it's about growth in all quarters of the country, and seeing for what it is, the truth, which is that I think that there is no better place, obviously I would say, than the North East, but the North in general, to get growth in this country, because we have been so underserved for so long that the opportunity is greater. And so I think some of it is about Green Book, some of it's about the compelling narrative that we have to work together as the Great North to tell.
And I think, just if I could just respond, I hope that the TNF, Transport for the North offer, has helped your officials as well, and that's something that we're trying to coordinate from the centre. As far as what the Mayor McGuinness has just said, I think it is essential that we all speak as close as possible together as far as the changes that would be required as far as the Green Book are concerned. We've got a paper on that a bit later on which shows some of the work we've already done as far as that is concerned, but it's actually a very crucial period at the moment with the consultation out on that document, that we make sure we all get our representations in. I would hope the paper we've got later on will be useful to other authorities to endorse or take bits out of that to include in their own submissions, which I know they will do. Martin, you wanted to come back in, and then Mark.
It was just one last thing, just to really emphasise this issue around the £1 fare for young people. And I'm sure around the table in different regions, we're working on these issues. We all share the same policy objective, which is what we want is for people to use public transport, to have world-class public transport systems that people use by choice, not because they're forced to, but because it is so much better quality that they'll use this as a matter of choice. And the thing about, I mean, we'll all share our experience on these things, but the research and the evidence is demonstrating to us, not just anecdotally, but we can do it empirically, is that the impact of that £1 fare for you, there is in my opinion, there's a generational change taking place. When I was 17 years old in the 1970s, I couldn't wait to get a driving licence. My daughter's 22-year-old and she doesn't care whether she never gets a driving licence. And talking to our friends, you know, because how... Is that right, Mr. Gannon? You're responsible for this £1 fare. I'm a hero amongst 21-year-olds and my daughter's friends. Honestly, the impact of that is absolutely enormous. That's, to my mind, we need, of course, to improve access to public transport for all generations. But in terms of investment, for a permanent shift, I think that investment in young people is really important.
Okay, thank you. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. In devising and, more importantly, in implementing the local transport plan, how important has been considerations around social and economic value, local supply chains, local economic impacts, etc.?
A huge amount, and increasingly so, I think is the short answer to your question, is that we absolutely want to use this as a way to boost our regional economy. I think we've got some real opportunity. You can see the way that the local transport plan fits with, and obviously we've not been able to provide you an unpublished growth plan, but you would see that it very clearly fits with the objectives of a growth plan which put social value at the heart of everything that we're doing. And I think for combined authorities more broadly, and I guess this is an ideological point rather than one that's specifically about how we use our public transport and transport objectives in general, but more broadly, I think that we need, with our combined authorities, to move away from the model that was initially formed as kind of devolved powers to mayors, which were very much entirely about economic growth, job creation. All of that is so very important, but it has to be about fulfilment of a broader social agenda as well. You know, giving, as I said, access to opportunity for people from a wide range of backgrounds, tackling poverty, you know, putting in place those anti-poverty interventions like cheaper fares and access to transport for those getting back into work or training, you know, making sure that we're making transport more accessible to women, making sure that we're working in and through the local supply chain. It's crucial.
Because I just final point. You see, I would argue that all of those social value things are actually economic impactful as well. So the two are not mutually exclusive at all.
I guess that's entirely my point, is that I think previously we've been encouraged to see them as an individual, you know, as a silo. And I think that's true of transport as well. So I think we've been previously, you know, compelled to think about transport in a vacuum. It's about getting from A to B. It's about the best value transport project. How do you deliver the most for the least? All of those things. When actually we've got to start seeing these things in the wider setting of how are we, you know, using transport as a tool for economic growth, using transport as the infrastructure of opportunity. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I think, obviously, again, to reiterate my thanks for the officers for the help we've given for Warrington, particularly of our bus company and that transport. But also to look at the Green Book is like, it's the only tool we've got to talk to government over at present to try and address the imbalance between the North and the South. I think it shouldn't be the only tool we've got, but it's the only one on the table for us at this moment in time. But I didn't want us to take our eye off the real issue of the actually addressing the imbalance and only look at the one thing on the table, the Green Book, and then focus on that. And then everyone else focus on it, including government, and they're thinking that's going to solve everything, which it won't. But it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Okay. John?
Just very quickly, so I'm John Hall, Department for Transport. Just to note that we came out for a couple of days back in January with your team and really saw in evidence all the stuff that you've been saying. So in particular, something we're really interested in Department for Transport and in central government about using devolution to put transport at the heart of things to enable growth, opportunity, and tackling social exclusion, and not just as an end in itself. So just thought I would put that on record.
Okay, Martin.
Chair, just on a couple of things, picking up on Councillor Mundry's, Rachel and the team, having had the issue raised by yourselves at Warrington, we talked with colleagues at Blackpool because it was the same issue facing their municipal company. I think it's a good illustration of how we can work together on these things where they come together. I just wanted to come back to what Mayor McGuinness has been saying in the presentation about looking for support from TfN for things like the Leamside line. Absolutely, and you can call on us, and we've been working with your team at Nexus who are looking to put the business case together, because it absolutely makes sense, not just from the North East perspective, but from the wider North. And indeed, as you said, Chair, we've been working with your officers, Mayor McGuinness, about the A19, because that does strike me as a good example of where we've got to cut through the nonsense of the economic argument to actually what are we trying to achieve. So I hope we can build upon the relationships we've already got with you and your officers, Mayor McGuinness.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that covers that particular presentation. Can I congratulate you, Mayor McGuinness, on your sort of first 12 months of bringing... well, yes, I realise it's... yes, okay, not quite 12 months, but with just the achievements in that sort of short time, and the way in which you're rising to that challenge of bringing all those authorities together and bringing forward a plan. And I think it is right to look to the next 15 years, because these things don't happen overnight and they do take a lot of preparation. So thank you very much, and thank you for coming today. I know you're recovering from an operation, so we very much appreciate you being with us today. Thank you very much indeed. Right, if we can now move on to item number 5, which is the budget and business planning. Martin, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And first, may I say just to the board, apologies from my colleague Paul Kelly, who's our finance director, who would normally be here to do this. He's currently unwell, which is why he's not able to join us today. But in combination of myself and Lisa as the Deputy Section 151 officer, we hope we can take you through the paper today. The paper you've got before you, I hope, is relatively clear in terms of what we're trying to achieve. I think, Chair, just given the fact that we're not quorate at the moment, the main focus here is in particular on recommendation F, 2.1F, which is about seeking your steer as a group that you're comfortable with the budget. Sorry, may I just make... Yes.
No, not quite. No, we'd still be one short, and it was because Louise had to pull out.
I was just checking because obviously if she did, it would be worth
Yes.
Chair, if just to be clear, the budget is one where it's delegated to you to approve it as a board, and it's one where you actually need a 75% majority. So, Mayor McGuinness, we would actually need more than just Mayor Brabin to be here. So what we're looking for today is your support in principle for what we're setting out in the budget. It will then need to be ratified at the June board meeting. We will write out to other board members to seek their support for the direction of the budget. We have heard back this morning from Mayor Burnham and from Councillor Gittins, who wasn't able to make it overnight, that they are supportive of the approach in the budget that's before you. In terms of the paper, it sets out that the budget, we received the funding letter from the Secretary of State at the end of February. We have taken you through as a board the assumptions that we had made about funding level. We thought that it was prudent to be working on the basis of a standstill in cash terms for the new financial year, and that is indeed what it's turned out to be. What we have done in the accompanying business plan is using the steers that you have given us as a board previously, focused on those things where you say we add value. So the TfN offer, where we provide technical advice. The Northern we just talked about the work around You've got the...
Do you want to... anything? Okay, Mark. No, sorry, I saw your light on, which I thought meant... Anybody else want to come in on that? Hans?
Just a short comment on there. I noticed it's probably a standstill budget and we're using the funds we've got wisely. And this one can ask is staff retention. Is there any issues with staff retention we could address by using the budget to make sure we manage to keep hold of the valuable staff that we need?
Chair, I mean, at the moment, we're very lucky in terms of the staff retention. I think we have a very motivated workforce. I think we can all be very proud of the fact that we were in the top 100 medium-sized firms last year as a place to be employed. I think it would be fair to say, Councillor Mundry, that the period before we get the funding confirmed from government is always a bit when naturally people just ask questions. But the way we approach is we're very transparent with the conversations we have with the department about the planning assumptions, and equally we're very transparent with the staff, so we keep them abreast of the way we're approaching it, the conversations we're having, so that they are they're fully sighted on what we're doing. But I would say at the moment I don't see any problem in terms of retaining staff.
Sorry, Tracy, very welcome. As you know, Mayor McGuinness has done the welcome, and sort of we've dealt a bit with what's going on in the North East, and we've just moved on to the budget and business planning for the forthcoming year. We're in a position of not being quorate today because some people had to pull out overnight. So we have had to take some special measures, which we can explain later on if you so wish, but we can make progress.
Thank you, and a pleasure to be here finally on a delayed train. We need investment in the north. For anybody that's a Geordie, congratulations. I was surprised to see anybody here actually after yesterday. One question just on the previous point. It's not in the notes, but it would be useful to know the gender pay gap.
Right.
Hang on, Tom, but we can find out.
Chair, I will find out and come back to you. I will come back to you on that one.
I would just also point out, Mayor Braben, you are sitting at the other side from Liverpool as well, so we've had to be slightly... Right, are there any other for the forthcoming year? No? Okay. Martin, do you want to explain what we're doing as far as covering for this to enable us to take this over the board?
If I may, I'll pass on to Joanne.
Joanne?
Good afternoon, everybody. As this is a consultation meeting, we're seeking your formal support for the recommendations. The formal approvals for this paper will be sought by the approval of our members today and also via email consultation. Both of these are using the Chief Executive's delegated powers under Transport for the North's Constitution. In terms of recommendation 2.1F, we are seeking your formal support, and this decision will be ratified at our June meeting on the 23rd of June. And the reason for this is because we require a supermajority for that, and also 75% of the weighted vote, and that's a decision which is specifically reserved to the board. But by getting your approval today and via an email consultation with the members, it means that as from the 1st of April, Transport for the North can lawfully operate within its budget and spend the money which it's required to do so. Thank you.
Hans?
To progress, I formally move that we take that course of action.
Thank you. Can I have a second to that? Bill, thank you. Okay. Is everybody in agreement? Thank you very much. Okay. Can we... with the next item, which is the constitutional amendments. We need a supermajority for that, but we are also in a situation where some of these changes come back about as the changes in local government structure and formation. So we're going to deal with this in roughly the same sort of way. Joanne, do you want to say anything by way of introduction before anybody else comes in?
I think you said it, Chair. Just one thing, Chair. So the decisions on quorum have already been approved by our General Purposes Committee, and they recommended that this is the way forward, and this is because of the new Devo deals in the North and the establishment of the 3 new combined authorities. The Transport for the North's membership has gone from 19 to 14. Thank you.
I thought you'd indicated you... Sorry.
I'm not quite sure, Chair, if we've actually moved on. It was it's paper 5. 1 second.
Yeah, and the budget paper.
The budget paper, page 43. Have we moved on?
We have moved on, but if you've got a specific question...
Yes, if I may. It's just regarding the establishment of the roles, 122 roles in the organisation. And my question is, this is a 3-year funding agreement, is my understanding. It's 1 year. I suppose then my question still stands as the structures of the statutory relationship between GBR and mayors and so on. It would be interesting to understand the direction of travel regarding roles in the organisation, because obviously times are changing and not everybody would be necessarily needing to do the same job. There might be other roles as well. So I just wonder what thinking has been underway to, to think about the future of these roles.
If I might, Chair, respond to Mayor Brabin. Absolutely right, Mayor Brabin. There are roles in there which will need to evolve and change as a consequence of rail reform. We've identified the fact that that's an ongoing conversation through the Rail North Committee. The members of when you see in the establishment the RNP funded, that's the team that's led by Gary Bogan. They are TfN employees, but they work across to the department on the management of the contracts for both TP and Northern. Now, clearly, as rail reform changes, the structures, we will need to work with those. I will have an obligation, as they are employees of TfN, to work with the department and other partners to see that those functions and duties are carried forward. Likewise, it's our expectation over the next 12 months, Mayor Brabin, that we will be working with you as partners to understand what functions on rail are more appropriate for TfN and what are more appropriate for the mayors in their new role. So it is an ongoing process. In terms of the medium-term plan, we've made some assumptions, but there's a note in there and a reference in there to the fact that it will be changing, and we will need to have that conversation with you over the next 12 months.
Thank you.
So, as far as item 6 is concerned, can I take it? Is there anybody against the Constitution? Sorry. Who's going?
Yeah, I suppose for me, there's something about the fundamentals of this. So I feel like what we're dealing with here is quite a significant constitutional change in essentially the makeup and the politics of the North. We're dealing with a serious rearranging of the key leadership positions in the North and much more enhanced devolution. And it feels a little bit like Transport for the North is dealing with that by nodding through a couple of constitutional amendments about quoracy, when actually there probably are wider questions to be answered and asked about the shape of the organisation, fitness for purpose, how it will fit with, reflect the insurgency of the Great North, which is something that we're working to develop, and how, with a new government and a new set of political priorities at the centre, at the same time as a greater focus on growth in all parts of the country, we probably need to have a much wider conversation than simply whether or not we can get 7 people or 7 or constituted organisations to agree a change for the budget. Sorry to kind of throw in a major grenade, but it just feels like it probably, at least as a minimum, needs to be said. It might be that we have to do this now and then revisit that in a wider sense, but it feels wrong to not put that on record, that I think there are, you know, with a lot of new mayors and more new mayors to come to the table, a lot of new combined authorities with new powers, it needs to be said. Thank you.
I don't think I could disagree with that at all, and that is a conversation which I think the mayors need to have, along with what you want to feed in as far as the Great Northern debate is concerned. At the moment, what we're dealing with is in a way, the consequences of the changes that have been brought about, and the fact that we've got the funding letter from the Secretary of State as to how we do with the next 12 months. And I see in that particular period of time, some of those other conversations which you've just rightly referred to will take place as to the longer term vision as to what Transport for the North needs to do, and to actually how we address the issue of how we are most useful to you. And that's one of the reasons why I think the TFN offer book, and if you look at that paper later on, as to how many authorities have taken us up on that now, not just the combined authorities, but also organisations outside the combined authorities to help make their case or to get certain answers for us. So I think the point you make is an absolutely valid one that needs to be properly addressed. But we have got to the suggestion before you today is that we do reflect those changes which have been made by the combined authorities, and we reflect those in our constitution to give people the opportunity to be representative at this meeting. Katie, do you want to go?
Perhaps if I could just add to that, Mayor McGuinness, I'm really glad you've raised this, because the world around us has just changed dramatically. And the Chair's right, we've got some immediate points that we need to deal with to allow this board to continue to function for the next 6 to 12 months. But actually, rail reforms come along. We're looking at mayors having more statutory powers for rail. We will, I always quote Mayor Brabin's statistic, we've got 16 million population in the north of England, 15 million already covered by some sort of devolution. And actually, we're very quickly going to have more. So I think we've got to come away from this. We're already having some conversations with your officers about what shape, form, function can TFN have in the future to support you, whether you're working collectively as the North, whether it's the Great North Partnership, whether it's the convention, whether it's those bilateral partnerships. You know, we've seen the White Rose Partnership announced just last week. We've seen the work that the Liverpool-Manchester Railway Board, for example. So how can we best support and enable all of you in your agendas going forward? And that may need to look and feel different. And I think we need to work that solution through with you, because as I always say, when anyone says, who do you work for? I work for the mayors and the political leaders of the North. So we work for you as a collective. So it's about how we can do that. And I think it's quite urgent and important work to do that, because the world is changing very fast. So certainly in my mind, I'd like us to be coming back to this board, I'd hope in June, with some initial thoughts for discussion that we can have then picked up with your officers in between. Thank you.
Mayor Braven.
I just want to just back what Kim has said, that we are moving at pace in our regions, working collectively, because there is a ticking clock here for Transport for the North. We've got the spending review, and we're meeting again, the next meeting, what is going to be discussed in the next meeting. In these papers, we don't have the Transport for the North spending review submission. So we can't even, that's correct, isn't it? We still don't have it. So we haven't been able to bring that to this meeting to discuss it. So we've been speaking as a board since I became a mayor 4 years ago about looking at how we get fast trains from Leeds to Sheffield. And devolution has given us that opportunity to work as mayors collectively, signing the White Rose Agreement with our advocate, Lord David Blunkett, to get into those meetings, be our advocates and insist, elbow our ways in to conversations to say, if you want growth in the country, you have to invest in transport. And it does feel that this system has not been as effective as we all want it to be, working collectively in the north. And if I may just say, it did make me chuckle on the train that page 65, when it's our corporate milestones, the box is completely empty. You just think that's a bit of a rookie error, because surely there would be some corporate milestones in there. But we are here to get better transport for the north, but we have to work at speed, I'm afraid. And whatever the structures of this organisation,
I think ours is stuck on.
it's stuck on. Sorry, we do have one sheet, but we don't actually have the submission to know what was submitted.
Martin, are you?
Just on the milestones point that Mayor Braben you've raised, that's something that's being finalised now. We got the funding letter at the end of February. We needed to get your support for the direction of the budget, and then we were able to be putting the milestones around that. So that will be following by the end of the month, based upon the budget that we've now got. So it's understood the point you're making, but I hope you understand, because we had to wait for the funding settlement, we then needed to be able to build on that.
Was this shared with the...
We'll come on to the spending review in a minute.
Okay.
Obviously, that there is a challenge in that we can't really read this and discuss it today. Yeah.
Go on then.
Chair, what I would suggest, if we'll come back to how we handle the spending review paper in a moment when we get to that on the agenda. Clearly, members need to have a chance to reflect upon it and to comment on it before. So I would not be wanting this meeting today to be being asked to agree it, because that is clearly not appropriate. But if we can come back to that in a moment, I think the point we were dealing with on agenda item 6, which was in relation to the constitutional amendments, I think the point that was being made by Mayor McGuinness and Mayor Braben was the fact that we need to work with our constituent authorities, the elected mayors, to shape the future of transport for the North. It is the mayors, it's the party, it's the political leaders' board, and I think you've heard from Katie that we recognise that, and we want to work with your officers over the next few months, so that there will be an initial proposition that we can bring to the meeting at the June meeting. For that's about the future shape of TfN.
Okay, thank you. Can we then move on to... Sorry, Mark.
Can I just make the point that one of the beauties of TfN has always been that it doesn't just reflect the Metro Mayor. areas, and that there are huge areas of the north which are still not subject to that. So I would hate for those areas to have less of a voice on TFN going forwards. I'll just make that point.
I don't think that that's what any of us would suggest.
Okay. I mean, I think the point about what is the future and how this, as an organisation, adapts so that we do the job that we're asked to do is something that we should always be ready to look at, investigate and move forward and make changes where necessary. So we'll deal with that as a result of not just this conversation, but it should always be in the front of our minds. And that, I think, is important. Move on to...
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
So, apologies. So this has already been submitted to government? No. Okay. What date is this being submitted to government?
It will only be submitted if the members of the board are comfortable with it, Mayor Braben. So we will, if we can, we'll talk about how we get your comments when we get to the item on the agenda, and then we can be clear then. But it's most definitely has not been submitted to anybody, nor would it be without the board's approval.
We had the one-year funding letter from the Secretary of State, which is at the back of that pack. This is for the spending review and beyond the spending review. Okay, can we then move on to item 7, Katie?
Thank you, Chair. So as members may recall, we, in taking your mind just before Christmas at our board meeting about the direction of the business plan for this next year, 25-26, we also took an opportunity to refresh our communications and engagement strategy. Again, as I said just moments ago, the world has moved on, and it has moved on very fast, and we want to make sure that the work that we're doing in terms of our advocacy and our engagement meets the needs of the members around this table. And our wider membership too. So Mayor Rotherham helpfully suggested we defer the paper to this meeting to ensure we had enough time to discuss it. If you may recall, we had a very busy agenda in December and we didn't get the opportunity to reflect on this paper. So the intention here, and I would perhaps draw members' attention to paragraph 4.3, is around how, as TFN, as a membership body constituted by the political leaders of the north of England with our business representative and our delivery partners, how we can use our communications and engagement to do that advocacy, as Mayor Braben has mentioned, as a statutory pan-regional body. How can we use our powers, use our resources to actually make sure we get that transformational transport infrastructure and services for our region? Alongside that, it's not just about those pan-regional connections, but some of those more significant investments as well that we see happening within your authority areas. We've touched on a few of those this morning. When I always think about the Leamside Investment Corridor, I always think about talking to Councillor Gannon and that opportunity of actually relieving some of that capacity issues on the East Coast Main Line, and actually therefore you then start to talk about it being of a national strategic importance, connecting the north and the south, the freight opportunities. So how do we get behind some of that more so and actually get that investment that we need into the region? So how can our communications and engagement do more to support you? I think it's fair to say as well, there is so many brilliant things going on in the north of England. Let's put the football to one side last night, but actually I always think about what we see happening at Hitachi, for example, in the Tees Valley, and we're building these amazing trains, and we need to be shouting more about what the north is doing and what the north is doing really well. We are getting the Thames, the Trans-Pennine route upgrade. You know, we are making stuff happen, so I want our comms and engagement to be better telling the story of the great things that we are doing in the north to unlock potential. And of course, that unlocking of potential was what sits and is built upon in terms of the strategic transport plan, that Northern Powerhouse independent economic review figure, that figure we said, that 118 billion that you could get if you just pulled all the right policy levers with the investment in the same way in the north as you do in the south. Patrick has touched on the TFN offer, but when we've had more than, I think, over 120 requests in the first year of operation, we recognise that we've got a resource in TFN, in our TAME team, in our strategy and our policy team that can support an economy of scale for your authorities as well. So we want to make sure that we are being much more proactive in coming out to support you. And I know that was a point Mayor Coppard made to me several times. He said, don't wait for us to come to you, come to us, come and help us do things. And I think finally, I think the value as well is when Northern leaders do want to come together, they do want to speak together. We've touched on the Green Book reform, and we've been doing work with your officers around that Northern Appraisal Playbook. We have got a growing, fantastic story to tell in the north of England about public transport and how we're transforming the upper through our bus services, for example. So again, how can we promote some of those stories, some of those points of investment that we actually want and need here in the north of England? So it's a step up in our advocacy to be able to do that. So those 5 objectives I've set out at 4.3 are intended to be the framework on which I will then come away from this talking with your teams, talking with our executive board to actually make sure we've got those activities and engagements and advocacy structured around to support that work as a statutory partner of the DFT and as your statutory body for transport in the north. And I would really just welcome any comments and feedback to allow us to crack on with that work. Thank you.
Okay. Kilburn, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor Rotherham and the Liverpool City region look forward to welcoming you to the great city of Liverpool for the June meeting. And if you can, swing by St Helens, where we've got the greatest rugby league team in the world. Hopefully it still is after Friday, but I don't know yet. Thank you.
Peter.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at 4.5. Can you say a bit more about discontinuing the APPG? I mean, will that be done in some other way by some other group? Because the APPGs can be valuable, as you know.
Sorry. I think part of the feeling was here that just an APG on Transport for the North, there was a lot of effort put into it, and sometimes the attendance was variable. But there are a lot of other transport issues in the north that go on that we want to align ourselves to those APPGs. Leamside Link, Grove 360, for instance, are just 2 that automatically spring to mind that I've particularly got an interest in, but there are other ones as well. And that's what was the thinking behind that, which would be much more concentrated rather than just a very broad brush right across the whole spectrum. Mayor Braben.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I think I really welcome this change. It feels like the first time in a while that we've looked at who we are as a board and thought we need to change with the circumstances. I mean, potentially could go, obviously understanding the world of devolution, things might change again from this. But I think this is evidence of the new world, and I think APPGs, whilst often valuable, can sometimes, particularly in transport when things move slowly, end up just talking about the same things, and then you get low attendance and a lack of excitement around possibilities. And particularly when it comes to Transport for the North, that is the last thing we want. We want to create more excitement about us being a levers for growth.
Anne McGuinness.
Can I add to that? I agree wholeheartedly. And I would also add there is something about APPGs being at the centre of what is essentially a devolved agenda that, for me, pushes against the grain. And I think that's something that we have to be really careful in our actions. You know, of course, we need great support in Parliament. We need our parliamentary colleagues to be doing their best and badgering those in the offices of state to give us what we need in the north. But kind of centering discussion around Parliament for investment in the north or advancement in the north or transport in the north feels like quite an anti-devolution sentiment.
I think as well, when you get Pacific issues, there is much more concentration on those Pacific issues as well. Mark.
Thanks, Chair. I broadly welcome this approach, and I think that the emphasis on collaboration, piggybacking on other organisations, events, etc., I think is the right thing to do. I welcome the focus on collaboration with business organisations. I think that's hugely important. I would also make the point that getting messages out is actually an art form in itself, and getting them picked up by other media to report, so it builds the whole momentum. And I think if I was to be slightly critical, I think some of the PR that's come out has been very, very lengthy. And we need to be much punchier. You need headline-grabbing stuff to get people's attention. So I just offer a bit more punchiness, please.
I completely and utterly agree with you, and I'll say no more, but it is those points. It's the ability to be really succinct and not send a lengthy policy paper.
Yeah. Writing PR is an art form. It really is.
It's okay, Mayor McGuinness. He lives quite local to me, so I might go and ask for some help. Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Okay, I think that's broad endorsement, Katie, for the paper. So thank you very much, and thank you for moving this forward. Thank you very much indeed. Right, can we move on then to the Northern Appraisal playbook briefing? Rachel.
Thank you,
Chair.
You move on. We've heard quite a lot about this already today, the Northern Appraisal playbook and its importance. But as part of a suite of the work that we're doing, working alongside the narrative that Katie's just described, but as well as things like the TFN offer. The need to reform the appraisal system was identified as part of our strategic transport plan, and it's something that we've been working behind the scenes to take forward to make sure that actually appraisal isn't just about benefit-cost ratio, but it also considers the societal and the environmental impacts and benefits of schemes. At the December board meeting, board members asked us for an update, and it felt really timely to bring this along today, particularly in light of the fact that the Treasury have announced a review of the Green Book. And we believe that we've actually got a lot of evidence through the development of our appraisal playbook which could support that, but also help members in some of the messages that they might want to give back to Treasury. The intention is that the Green Book review is going to report alongside spending round this summer, so really timely conversation and an opportunity for us to influence some of that thinking. The way that we approach the playbook, we considered evidence on how existing appraisal mechanisms can be strengthened to build in and reflect those environmental and societal benefits of schemes. So what we did was we tested our approach on 2 existing schemes, 2 completed schemes, where we already had some post-evaluation results. And what we looked at was how we could strengthen the strategic and economic cases of those schemes using flexibilities that already exist within the Green Book. So what we've done is we've developed a hints and tips guidance document, which is attached at Appendix 1, which we hope that our partners can use in developing current business cases. And what this recognises is, at the minute, we have to work within the existing Green Book setup, but actually what we need to be able to do is maximise the flexibilities that exist within that and use different tools and techniques to see how we enhance our strategic and our economic cases. So Appendix 1 is our hints and tips document, and paragraph 4.2, I would draw your attention to that because that sets out some of those flexibilities and also some of the TFN tools that already exist through our TFN offer that can help support that. But as well as considering the current flexibilities within the Green Book, we found that there's evidence that there's real fundamental changes are needed to some of the underlying assumptions within the Green Book. I don't think that's any surprise to anybody around this table, but what we've been doing is gathering evidence to support that and looking at some of the areas where we think that some of the further research is needed. So Appendix 3 sets out some of the areas where we think that either TFN or the Treasury could look to take forward some additional research, some evidence gathering to support that further work. And at TFN, we've already started doing some of that. So, for example, we had a roundtable with the Independent Transport Commission last week to look at the value of travel time savings and what that means. So, for example, at the minute, business travel is so highly rated in terms of value of travel time. But what does that mean for somebody who's a carer who's working to support a member of their family? 30 minutes of travel time savings in monetary terms for them might not be that high, but actually the impact that it has on them as an individual and the difference that it makes to them is really, really important. So how do we start to look at something like the values of travel time savings in a different way so that it supports our communities and our residents to make sure that they're getting the benefit that they need? What we'd also like to do as part of our future work on the playbook is to identify some current schemes that are being developed that are maybe struggling with a benefit-cost ratio. So, for example, we've heard about the A19. That's something where we think that we could really offer some value, and we're already in conversation with colleagues at the North East Combined Authority about how that could be done. But we'd welcome other examples where you would like us as members to get involved and support you. We do feel that we can support the Treasury's review of Green Book, and we've drafted a letter to the Treasury, which is at Appendix 2, and would really welcome your comments on that. Our letter sets out that we do need a fundamental change to appraisal and to help address the investment gap. What we're suggesting is we could also look at, if you're doing devolved funding, could you think about devolved appraisal mechanisms and how that could work in terms of helping decisions to be made based on local policy priorities and also allow decisions to be taken by our mayors. So we've also offered in the letter to convene a meeting for the Treasury to meet with our political leaders to discuss this important pan-regional issue. What we're intending to do after this meeting as well is write to our political leaders who can't be with us today and suggest that the letter may include some representations that they might want to share with Treasury as well. I'd welcome any comments from members on the playbook and the letter to Treasury. Thank you.
I really support this work because we've got to make the argument that this is about social inclusion and growing our local economies. So I really welcome it. And the letter seems very thorough. And it does feel like the Chancellor is minded to reflect the changes in the Green Book and our approach in her spending review, so it's very timely. So I'm assuming that's going to go imminently.
The intention is that we would send that letter following this board meeting and approval from members. We will send it to the mayors who can't be with us today to ask for their approval as well.
Any other comments? Pete.
I'll go after Councillor McCormack. I think she had a hand up just before me.
Quick, you see, rugby league, that's what it is. The City Region and Mayor Rotherham are very, very passionate about this issue. And as Mayor Brabin said, this work stream and the work being done will ensure a more level playing field for the transport schemes that we're projecting in the north, and will level up in social value and for people who are disadvantaged, and we are very supportive of this. Thank you.
Councillor Kilbrain.
Oh, thanks, Chair, and apologies for being late, everybody. It's not the first time that a board member has arrived late due to the nature of transport in the north. So it used to be ironic, but I'm afraid it's routine at the moment. Yeah, obviously, I support the comments from York and North Yorkshire perspective, support the comments of the other authorities. And I think, one of the problems with the Green Book, as we all know, is that it doesn't mention, it doesn't really measure social value. So I think one of the things that I would like to say, and I don't know how you do it, is that what's really important in terms of connectivity is the thought that you are connected to places, whether or not you use that connection. So I think back to the time that I lived in England's second city when I lived down in London, and I used to live out in Finsbury Park. And in my head, I was connected to all of the fabulous attractions and events that London has to offer. I mean, the truth of the matter is I never really left Finsbury Park, but I knew I was connected to those if I wanted to go. Now, where we're looking at potential growth in areas like Scarborough, the importance of 2 trains an hour between Scarborough and York is actually in the psychology of the people when they're thinking about should I go and live in Scarborough. Because when they get to Scarborough, they'll find out it's such a fantastic place, they'll never want to leave. But psychologically, if you think you only have to wait half an hour for a train that can connect you to York, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, then it makes a big difference when businesses and people are thinking about where they're going to relocate and live. Now, that's very hard to measure, isn't it? You can't measure the people who didn't get on the train, but in their heads they're there because that service exists. So I don't know how you can kind of factor in those nebulous things, but I think the social nature of these connections, whether or not they're used, is vital.
Thank you, Councillor Kilbrain. You're just reminding me of my visit to Finsbury Park when I was challenged to go there by the local Member of Parliament, who happened to be Jeremy Corbyn, if my memory is correct. I've got the right station, I can see you nodding. Councillor Munbury.
Yes, fine. Like others, I welcome the report and the paper, but I'd like to reiterate what I said earlier on, as a first step, not as a job completed. I think the imbalance between the north and the south is so great that paper on its own won't address it, but it's the first step to addressing the imbalance.
Yeah, but I buy that, but we've got to make sure we feed into this paper. That's the important thing, I think. Anybody else? I think there was general approval and welcome for that, so we'll get that letter off and also send it to other people that aren't possibly here today to get an endorsement. Sorry, Mark.
Just picking up that wider point. I think the context here is that it is economically illiterate for Treasury to downplay the advantage of economic growth from a very low base in the north compared to the south. It's economically illiterate. In fact, it's the wrong way around, because to increase growth from a low base has a disproportionate beneficial economic impact, whereas spending more in the south, just on an artificial metric, achieves less. So I think we can make that point. I've said it very clumsily, but you can do it much more articulate than I can. But I think that's an overriding message that can wrap around this submission.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. General approval for that. Thank you very much indeed. Can we move on then to Martin, the spending review?
Chair, thank you. And just to, again, repeat the apology for the fact this is a late paper, I suggest that rather than trying to approve it today, as I said earlier, I think what we're saying, going to point about from Mayor Brabin about what's the timescales for this, I think if we could ask for members here to come back by the end of the week with comments, then rather than, as we suggest in the paper, delegating it to the chair and the vice chair, I think it's incumbent upon us to do a revised version to then quickly circulate next week around all members so that they've seen how their comments have been taken on board. I think that's the most appropriate thing in the circumstances, given that individual members haven't had a chance to. Would you be content with that, Mayor Brabin?
I think that sounds like a good solution. The challenge is that we were, as a Mayoral Combined Authority, asked to submit our transport submission by mid-February. So is this just a collective submission for the North then? Because the question is, things that are missing, like Leeds T-shaped station, which impacts across the North, these are quite big parts of a submission. So I suppose it's, what's the intention of this particular submission, given it follows ours?
I think, Chair, the intention was to amplify any messages that individual authorities have placed in. I was reflecting on some of the comments at the Convention of the North, Mayor Brabin, where there was a powerful message. I think two of the powerful messages I took away was, one is, at the very least, treat transport as a protected budget. I know that's maybe a challenge for the government, but there was a very strong message from all the partners around the table there. There was also a very strong message about the time to invest and be committed to a long-term investment programme. So it's not just looking at the next 5 years, it's actually saying we need to have that commitment for the next 15 to 20 years, which was a message I know I heard very much in the session on the second day. So this was seeking to build upon some of those really big, substantial building blocks like Trans-Pennine route upgrade, like your own West Yorkshire Mass Transit, like the A66, amplify the significance of those rather than replacing the comments that have already been made in. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, but it's also an opportunity to reiterate the consistent messaging for long-term projects such as Leeds Station and the T-shape, rather than just extra platforms, etc. It's the ambition. If we believe that Northern Powerhouse Rail in full is our ambition, then we need that T-shaped station because of east-west, north-south.
Definitely, yes, very much so. Councillor Mumby.
Just an alteration before it comes to it is the Manchester to Liverpool, Liverpool to Manchester corridor we have on there. Is that Warrington Banquet is the key up really needs mentioning in there. We get very nervous when our town disappears off papers. We do know it's actually went through Parliament before last Parliament dissolved, and Warrington Banquet was quite firmly named in that route. along with the funding. It's one of the few things that the last Parliament did, where he actually attached money to it. I think there's £17 billion already been agreed when the bill went through. I think you Merrimans are part of the Liverpool to Manchester side of that, and ensuring that things like money and towns don't disappear off that line. So we're quite important that we keep there. So if we could do with the wording when it comes on again, if we have like Manchester, Liverpool, with Warrington Banky as a key up station in there, because it refers to another paper where Warrington is a key link to Chester, North Wales, and then on to Ireland. So it's actually a key element of the whole process, but we'd like to keep it in there and everybody knows where it is, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
Thanks, Chair. So my understanding is the proposal is that this goes out to the authorities who then will put their submissions in by the end of this week. I guess the question is, how do we decide what's taken forward? You know, if you look at this document, you know, a glaring omission would be the electrification from Leeds to Hull, which is a long-held ambition of Transport for the North, but you know, isn't there? There will be others. You know, I could rattle off some that are local to York and North Yorkshire that should be in there. Now, clearly, are we just going to submit everything that the authorities send in, or what's the process by which we decide what goes forward?
Thank you, Chair. Well, we feel that the lack of mention of the need for specific developmental funding for major enhancements to the rail network is disappointing. And also, Liverpool Central is the North's third busiest station and should also be mentioned in respect of funding and a commitment from government to work in partnership with the city region to deliver transformation to the city and the regional connectivity.
Peter?
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to see something in here about fixing things that are falling down. It's not very exciting, is it? But there's a lot of concrete infrastructure. There was mention in the presentation from the North East Combined Authority earlier about the Gateshead flyover. We've got bridges, and there's a lot of concrete structures that were built in the 60s and 70s that are now giving problems and cost a huge amount to fix. When they were built, they're often part of bypass schemes, etc. Lots of funding came to build them, but now they need to be rebuilt. There's no funding. I mean, we've got one bridge that would take our entire capital amount for the whole year, just one bridge. I don't know what the Gateshead flyover would cost, but I mean, I'm sure other people share this challenge, and there's no real funding stream from government and no recognition that this is a challenge.
Apologies. And the Gateshead flyover, this was the A1 until 1991, I think it was. It was built in the 60s. It was part of the national infrastructure, and I was a councillor during that period. I just can't remember thinking about the implications of it passing from national infrastructure to being the responsibility of Gateshead Council. And it is only one of many. Okay, in each local authority will have had these reports about the condition of some of the infrastructure, with banks falling away, concrete being exposed. The cost is absolutely astronomical. In terms of the implications of the flyover being closed, which we will have to remove within the next 6 months to a year, certainly before the end of this year. It's, the Department of Transport says there's no contingency. We were talking about support from the Combined Authority, but we've had to make provision for it, and it's £18 million. That's a fifth of our capital budget. Okay, so, we're having to work through the rest of the capital budget over one bridge. Okay, I'm just making the point here.
Chair, I think there's some very good... Just coming back specifically to Councillor Kilbane's, I mean, the Leeds to Hull electrification is, of course, part of the board's adopted position in terms of, and it's always been part of that in terms of NPR in full, as the board has always taken, and that's indeed part of the strategic transport plan. So that's the kind of thing that we can make sure we capture in a revised version of this. And I think, Chair, just to repeat the point I made earlier, I think what we would ask is that all members, not just those present today, respond to the draft as it is. We would then recirculate to all board members a revised version next week for them to look at and to comment on the final version, so that then there's agreement as to what. But it's very much about amplifying the big messages. I'm reminded that in terms of Leeds Hull electrification, one of the things we talked about there was it was an opportunity for a quick win in terms of actually delivering, and indeed the economic activity along the north side of the Humber. So we can pick that up.
Thank you, Chair. So the report provides an update on the TfN offer, which we launched in September 2023. And since that time, we've evolved the offer to include more tools, databases, and to roll out support to our mayoral combined authorities and our local transport authority partners. The support that we provide ranges from providing data sets to acting as a critical friend on business case development to help and shape model development. So it's quite a broad-ranging offer, and we're continuing to evolve and adapt the TfN offer to reflect the needs of our partners. I'm not going to spend too much time talking through the report. I'm going to take that as read. The brochure has recently been updated, and that includes all of our available support. But what I did want to do is just draw attention to a few key areas. So since its launch in September 2023 to the end of January 2025, we've supported 120 requests. We estimate that we've saved our authorities around £540,000 in that time, and our tools that we've developed and we've made available to everybody are valued at around £5 million. So that means by investing once for TfN to develop a tool, it can be used many times, and it can be used to give a consistent base across the north, sharing our evidence and our data that we've collected. You can hopefully see from Appendix 2 that we've supported a vast array of organisations, including rail operators, energy providers and other subnational transport bodies. So the reach of our offer is growing, but the majority of our support remains in the north and helping our partners. We're now turning our attention to the next stage of development of the offer, and that includes a number of areas. So first of all, awareness raising. Katie made the point before about come out and tell us what you can do. We're starting to come out and meet with your officers and have workshop sessions with them where we talk them through the vast range of tools and databases that we have available and explain how that could help with things like local transport plan development or business cases. We've already completed one of those visits. We got great feedback. It was actually with our colleagues from Warrington. And we've got 2 others in the pipeline. But that offers there that we can come out and we can meet with your officers and we can actually talk them through the full range of the offer. Alongside that, we're also starting to collect monitoring and evaluation information. So although we can estimate the cost savings, what we really want to understand is the benefit that this is having, so that when we are having conversations with the DfT about the ongoing development of the TfN offer, that we've got some real hard examples of how this has been used. So we know that it's been used in supporting a level and up fund bid recently. What was the outcome of that, and what was the impact that our data had? We're also looking to produce some case studies, always really helpful in terms of demonstrating what the tool can do. But we also want to undertake further engagement with your officers as well to understand what they would like to see coming out of the TfN offer. Where are maybe some of the gaps? What can we help fill? And how can we use some of that capacity and capability that we have available at pan-regional level to support you? That was all I wanted to say on the TfN offer, but I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
It's not a question, but it's a thank you. If you look at the listing, we do use the service a lot. And certainly going forward, particularly for our region and with the White Rose Agreement, I'm imagining that will continue. So thank you to your colleagues.
Thank you. Any other particular comments? I think this is a practical way. Talking earlier on about what we are practically doing, this is a practical way where we can help. Not just the constituent authorities, but just the transport infrastructure across the body, the whole of the region. So I am pleased with the way that this is progressing. So thank you very much for your support as far as that is concerned. Okay, can we then move on to the corporate risk register, which I don't think is going to take very long. shortly, but he's not here.
Yeah, sorry. Again, in Paul's absence, I'll just. I think really it's if any members have got any questions. The Audit and Governance Committee received the Corporate Risk Register at its meeting a couple of 10 days ago. They were content with it. You've got it updated. You will see in the covering report we draw out the 3 highest risks, and there's a bit of a narrative about how those are being managed. And so, Chair, it's really if any members have got any questions about the risk register, happy to take them.
Indicating. You just wanted to come back on the question you were asked earlier by Mayor Brabin about the gender gap. So.
It was just to confirm, Mayor Brabin, our HR colleagues have reminded me, of course, because we're under 250 employees, we don't formally report on it in terms of that. It's part of the regulations, but actually monitoring our diversity, as you can imagine, is something we think about every month when we get together as a leadership team. We're currently at 37% female employees within TFN, and that is across a range of roles. That is our senior leadership roles, it's our heads of service, and actually I'm really proud to say we've got an awful lot of wonderful technical transport planners, up-and-coming females in our team as well. So it's 37%, so out of our total employees at the moment are female, but we don't do the gender pay gap. We haven't reported on it because it's not an obligation because of the size of our organisation. But perhaps we'll take it away and have a think if there's something that might be worthwhile looking at there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And 37%, while not perfect, is better than I was anticipating. But whilst there's not a statutory obligation, I would like to think if I was part of an organisation, it would be something that would be an important priority, so worth gathering the data.
Okay, I think that's certainly something we will do in the future. I think Mayor Rotherham has also indicated there may be some facilities available to go and see earlier in the day if people want to do that, and we're still working a programme with that. Likewise, the meeting we've got planned for September in Darlington, where again I think there is some facilities for us to see as well. So, and it will be the week before the start of the 200-year celebrations of the railway in Darlington commence. So that should be quite an exciting time. So, Mayor Brabin.
Just regarding the diary, what preparations or plans has TFN got prior to UK Reef in May, which is 16,000 property developers and investors coming to Leeds, and an opportunity potentially, if it was needed, to ensure that the Chancellor of the Exchequer understands transport infrastructure is important?
Mayor Brabin, with the support I've had for the board today on the comms and engagement approach, I'm going to pick that one up. We've already started making inquiries. We've got a few things lined up already in the diary for that week, but I think I want to now take it away and go, actually, is there a stronger pitch we can make here? I think that's really important. And of course, the other one that I'm going to just mention as well is we have our Rail North Committee meeting, hopefully in Bradford, as City of Culture, in June as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.